There's a particular kind of quiet dread that arrives somewhere in your 20s or 30s and never quite leaves. You look around and everyone seems further along. They've found the thing. They've built the career, the relationship, the life that looks like it's going somewhere. And you're still circling, still unsure, still waiting for whatever was supposed to click. And underneath it all runs the same low sentence, the one you'd never say out loud. I've left it too late. I'm wasting my potential. The window is closing and I'm still standing outside it. But what if that feeling is built on something that isn't true? What if there is no single window, and some minds are built on purpose to bloom late? This is Pondara, things you never thought to wonder about. And if that opening felt less like an idea and more like a description of your own life, hear this clearly. You are not behind. You can't be behind because there is no single clock you're losing time against. The belief that you've peaked or fallen behind or missed your moment rests on one quiet assumption, that there's a right age for everything and a steady line everyone's supposed to climb. Neuroscience says that line doesn't exist. Your mind is not one thing rising and then falling. It's dozens of different abilities, each on its own schedule, each peaking at a completely different age. And once you see how far apart those peaks really are, the whole idea of being behind quietly falls apart. But first, let's look at the story you've already swallowed, the one that's been quietly stealing your years. The story is the prime, the idea that somewhere in your late teens or 20s, your brain hits its sharpest, brightest moment, and everything after that is a slow, managed decline. You were faster once, quicker to learn, quicker to recover, so if you haven't made it by now, the door is closing, and you're racing a clock that only runs one way. It feels true, because part of it is. Some things really are sharpest young. But the prime is a trap because it takes one true thing and stretches it over your entire mind. And the moment you test that, it falls apart. So let's test it. In 2015, two scientists, Joshua Hartshorne and Laura Germain, published a study in the journal Psychological Science. They gathered data from nearly 50,000 people across the whole span of adult life, and they asked a simple question. At what age is the human brain at its peak? And the answer was that there is no answer, because every ability they measured peaked at a different age. Raw processing speed, the sheer quickness of your mind, peaks around 18 or 19 and starts slipping almost immediately. So if speed were the whole story, you really would be in decline by your 20s. But it isn't the whole story. It's barely the start of it. Because look at what comes next. Short-term memory, your ability to hold and juggle information, doesn't peak until around 25 and holds steady for years after. So while one part of your mind is already past its best, another is only just arriving. And these aren't small gaps. The peaks are decades apart. The brain isn't a single light that brightens and dims. It's a sky full of stars, each one rising and setting on its own time. And then it gets stranger. The same study tested something deeper, the ability to read other people, to look at a face and know what someone is feeling. The thing we'd call wisdom or emotional intelligence. And that ability doesn't peak in your 20s or your 30s. It peaks in your 40s and 50s. Let that land. The part of your mind that understands people, that navigates conflict, reads a room, holds a marriage together, leads, is still climbing while you're convinced you're already over the hill. You are not declining. You're being rebuilt into something the younger version of you couldn't have been. There's one more, and it's the one that breaks the prime completely: your vocabulary. Your store of knowledge, language, the accumulated understanding of how the world actually works. Psychologists call this crystallized intelligence. And unlike raw speed, it doesn't fall. It keeps climbing through your 40s, your 50s, and peaks in your late 60s or early 70s. There's even a name for the two opposing forces. Fluid intelligence, the fast, raw processing, fades slowly with age. Crystallized intelligence, the deep, accumulated kind, rises for most of your life. You are not the same mind getting worse. You are a mind trading speed for depth the whole way down the line. If this is starting to rearrange something for you, a like genuinely helps these reach the people who need them most. And it leaves one last question hanging. If our minds are this slow to assemble, why are we so terrified of being slow? Here's where it turns inside out. We've had it backwards. We treat the early peak as the prize and the slow build as the consolation, and the science says it's very nearly the reverse. Start with the brain itself. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment, patience, long-term planning, the ability to hold a future in mind and walk toward it, is the last region to fully mature. It isn't finished until your mid-20s, sometimes later, which means the very machinery you'd need to have it all figured out young is, by definition, not online yet when you're young. Feeling lost in your 20s isn't a failure of character, it's a brain that hasn't finished installing the part that makes things feel figured out. And then look at who actually wins in the long run. We worship the head start, the prodigy, the kid who knew at 14. But when researchers followed them, the head start mostly evaporated. One analysis across 19 studies of more than 30,000 high achievers found that early peak performance was negatively correlated with later success. The early stars were largely not the same people standing at the top decades on. In chess, the world's top youth players and the world's top adult players are nearly 90% different people. The writer David Epstein gathered the same pattern across fields in his book, Range. The people who reach the highest levels often start late, wander first, sample widely, and that wandering, the very thing that looked like falling behind, is what built a range no early specialist could match. The slow path wasn't slower. It was building something the fast path skips. And here's the deepest part. The reason being behind feels so real, so universal, is that you are comparing your messy, unfinished middle to other people's finished, visible outsides. You see the ones who bloomed early because early blooms are loud and easy to see. You don't see the millions who peaked young and faded, or the ones still quietly assembling, like you, in the dark. It's survivorship bias, dressed up as a clock. You're not losing a race, you're standing in a field at dusk, convinced everyone else has already flowered, unable to see that most of the field hasn't opened yet, and that some flowers, by their nature, only open late. So, that quiet dread, the certainty that you've left it too late, that the window is closing, that everyone else is further along. Now you can see what was actually underneath it. There was no window. There was no single clock you were losing time against. The feeling of being behind came from measuring your whole sprawling, multi-peaked mind against one imaginary line. A line that, it turns out, nobody is actually walking. Some of your abilities already peaked years ago and you barely noticed. Others won't peak for decades. The wisdom, the depth, the judgment, the understanding of people, the things a life is actually built on, those are still, right now, climbing inside you. You were never running out of time. You were early. For the things that take the longest, you were always going to be early.
And here's why this matters more than reassurance. Some minds genuinely are built to compound slowly rather than sprint. To gather and wander and connect things across years until late, and then bloom all at once, deeper and wider than any early flower could. That slow build you've been ashamed of isn't lost time. It's the wiring of a different, rarer kind of capability, the kind that needs decades of raw material before it has anything to say. Lifelong neuroplasticity means your brain never stops being able to form new connections, learn new things, become someone new. There is no closing door. There never was. There is only a mind that is still, quietly assembling. So I'd love to know, and I'll read the replies. What's the one thing you've quietly told yourself it was too late for? Write it below, and then read what everyone else was wrong about too. And if the idea of a brain that keeps changing your whole life long is the kind of thing your mind wanders to at night, that's exactly the thread we pull next. Subscribe to Pondara and keep wandering. You are not behind. You never were. You're a slow bloom in a world that only knows how to count the fast ones. And the day you stop racing a clock that was never running is the day you finally get to grow.